Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from Drifting Falling, Diary of a Call Girl Suicide by A.J. Ullman. The thought of suicide is a great consolation. By means of it one gets through many a dark night. Friedrich Nietzsche. Chapter 1. Thursday, January the 1st. I have never cut myself, nor overdosed on painkillers or antidepressants, with or without alcohol. I have not put my neck in a noose or held a gun, loaded or not, up to my temple or in my mouth. But I have contemplated such deeds, and many such others, dreamed of them more times than there are stars in the skies. Suicide, you wonder? Is she thinking of killing herself? So depressing. Note to self that suicide isn't only for the depressed, it's an option when your other options aren't viable. You're supposed to loll at my little joke there. Houston, we have a problem. Not that I would admit to my lover, my gentleman friends, or heaven forbid my family or my psychiatrist. I don't need to worry about telling my friends. A girl like me doesn't have any friends. That's what he said, Jim Lovell, the Apollo 13 commander, not Houston, we have a problem. That we have a problem line people use now as a default cliche when things go wrong. But Lovell used the past tense. I know, I read the transcript. I know a lot about space, and when I was a girl I wanted to be an astronaut. I think about the problem I'd had. Even now, deliciously impaled by Carl's cock. Carl is not my psychiatrist, needless to say, or a member of my family, nor is he my lover. He is one of my gentleman friends. Carl is paying me $20,000 for the privilege of partying with him this entire holiday weekend, Wednesday through Sunday. The sex is part of the party, and for a man 20 years older than me, he does sex well. Stamina, baby, I tell him, you've got stamina. Even though I'm making really good money for a few days of my time, smiling and spreading my legs while sipping champagne, I still think about my problem. They never go away, the thoughts I can ignore, beat them down and try to slam the lid on them and keep them buried in the cellar, but like a lot of rotten smells, they waft up and out. Sooner or later you're going to catch that whiff, something rotten in Denmark. That's what Shakespeare was talking about. When I was 9, I dreamed that when I grew up I would be an astronaut. From the Greek sailor of the stars, I like Greek words and Greek names. More about that later. I never thought that at 21 I would be a call girl. But please don't call me a call girl. Call me an escort. Better yet, call me a geisha or courtesan. It sounds more exotic and less mercenary, more entertainer than sex companion. I grew up in a world where women could be anything they wanted to, right? I didn't have to be a trailblazer to become an astronaut. That had already been done for me. You remember Sally Ride? First American woman in space. Fun fact trivia about Sally, and what a great name for a woman who is destined to sally forth and ride rockets. She was and still is the youngest American ever to fly in space. I'm sure you remember poor Judith Resnick, second American woman in space, and Krista McAuliffe, both who blew to glory aboard the Challenger. Do you remember these astronauts? Valentina Tereshkova, Soviet astronaut, first woman in space. I knew her name, but I had to look up what the Soviet Union was. So 1950s, how about Anna Fisher? She was the first woman American with children to fly in space. Just to be clear, the children stayed home while she was on the space shuttle. I suppose you want to know why I'm writing this diary. I'm not a writer or an artist or a poet, but someone should hear my story. Someone should know the truth about me, by me. Not some story cobbled together by the therapists or psychiatrists or prosecutors. They all have an agenda in telling their versions of my story. My therapists believe that I have suffered unspeakably and need to heal. My psychiatrists think I'm crazy. Don't you love that? Shrinks never say someone's crazy, at least not to their face and not in their notes, so they still love to type in their computers. But you can bet they say it to each other when they sit around the water cooler at a shrink convention. Did I tell you about the one about the crazy girl from Ohio? Other shrinks say I'm totally sane, just sociopathic. The prosecutors, well, they say they want justice to be done. What they really mean is they want to send you away until long after they and their families are dead. So when I tell you my story, you can rest assured it's the unvarnished truth. I swear, because you can lie to the docs and the therapists and the judge, but you can never lie to yourself. So I suppose you would like to know my name. But I have 4 names. The name I was given by my parents, the ones that my clients know me by, the 3rd and 4th names Greek that I sort of nicknamed myself. More about them later. For those of you unfamiliar with the life, girls never use their real names. That's what Pierce, like that was his real name, lol, said. He's the owner of the escort agency I used to work for. It protects the girls from stalkers and from the police. Even the pictures he had of us on his website aren't really us, just girls who look like us. Facsimiles of girls for men who wish their wives or girlfriends were more like the facsimiles of their imaginations. My work name is Justine. I wanted Dakota, but Pierce vetoed that. If I ran a country and western service, that would be perfect, but my clients want a woman with a porn star name, so we settled on Justine. I asked him why he picked that name. He said the photograph I emailed him inspired him, one a former lover had taken of me when we were playing sex games. My hands were tied behind my back as I pouted naked before the camera. Only later did I realise that Pierce's inspiration came from the title character of the Marquis de Sade's famous book. But then it was far too late to change my stage name. Still, Dakota could have worked, what with Dakota Johnson in the 50 Shades movies. I even kind of look like her. My real name is Ripley Estilla Luna. My father insisted on naming rights over the objections of my mother, who bore the heavy labour not only of my birth, but of carrying me for 9 months. And he wanted something unique. Estilla is Spanish for crescent, Ripley crescent moon. My very name seemed to me predestination that I would be an astronaut. Ripley is an homage to the star of the Alien movies franchise. While it was no fun growing up with an unusual name, I came to be enamoured of it because of who and what Ripley was, and who I wanted to be when I grew up. My great-grandfather was a Mexican immigrant. He originally came over into New Mexico and settled there. Back then, when you didn't speak much English, the white folks weren't very interested in learning a real name. He eventually settled down in the town of Los Lunas, a few miles south of Albuquerque, on present-day I-25, though that road didn't exist when my great-grandfather lived there. When folks asked him where he came from at the beginning, he would say, "Y vengo de Los Lunas." I come from Los Lunas, and soon that town became the root of his new surname, Luna. My earliest memory is of trauma. How fitting. They say you can't remember anything before the age of 3. I say bunk. I distinctly remember standing in my crib, so how old was I? I must have been older than 9 months to be able to stand, and less than 2 years when you have to move to a toddler bed. My mother brought me a bottle to drink, and I wasn't having any of that. Mother bottle-fed me and didn't deign to give me her breast. I was visibly upset, little infant lungs bellowing and screaming and crying, face up, turning all red, upset at something. I flung that bottle, and it was a real glass bottle, not one of the plastic ones everyone used back then. And it shattered all over the floor, milk spraying in gobs soaking into the hardwood floor, and little diamond shards of glass glittering in the reflective light of the ceiling fixture. Whatever upset me about taking the bottle paled in comparison to the startle effect of that shattering glass, and I wailed inconsolably. My original sin and my original trauma. My life has been one PTSD fest ever since. Infants are supposed to attach to their caregiver. That's psych speak for mother. They say that if you attach well to your primary caregiver, you will deal better with stress in life, do well in school, have higher self-worth, and build healthier relationships. Some sociologist named Erickson came up with this theory back in the 1950s or so. Now, if you don't attach as an infant to dear old mum, then you have had a problem. As Captain Lavelle noted, you might be terrified to be left alone, or conversely to be completely blasé about your mum. You might act out in school, get depressed, and become, well, basically all fucked up. So at the age of 9 months, I guess that was me, unattached to mum and definitely fucked. They teach this stuff to psychology students. I mean, do I really want to believe that my mum didn't bond with me? That's what mums are supposed to do to the babies, while the babies are supposed to attach to the mums. So I was predestined to become a depressed dropout loser with no ability to form healthy relationships with people. So is it really unhealthy to be paid a lot of money to have sex with rich, good-looking older men? I mean, isn't that what marriage is all about? A girl marries a guy and gives him sex in return for clothing, room and board. I'm just not permanently attached to one man. Oops, there's an attachment word again. Look, consider me an entrepreneur. I have a limited commodity, and by that I mean my natural assets. Yes, I use that word on purpose. I'm young and a naughty hottie, and I'm willing to share it with a select group of guys with no strings attached. Just pay me well for the service. Everyone goes home with a smile on his or her face. This predestination thing is a tricky subject for me to wrap my head around. I mean, I want to believe. I know I sound like that X-Files guy Mulder that mother used to watch on TV. I want to believe that my fate is not fated, that I can change the outcome, but those darned Greeks, they truly believed that the shit people endured was fated and no escaping it. If Zeus said you had it coming by Jove, don't you like the way I mix my Greek god names with the Roman ones? You would end up chained on some mountain top with an eagle eating your liver out every day, only to have it regrow overnight and repeat the process ad nauseum until the end of time. Sometimes my want to believe is trumped by my experience, and my experience has been that my life, at least before I turned 18, was that of a catfish. I lived at the bottom of the pond feeding on other fishes' feces. Now I'm the cute goldfish in the bowl, so I've moved up the karma food chain. Not that we're really going to spend any time on Hindu mythology. But I've got a long way to go before I become human and nirvana. Well, that just isn't in the cards. See above about fate. Isn't it in the cards? Ever wondered where that phrase came from? In the old days, fortune tellers would read their tarot cards. They would lay a few out on the table and arrange them, and by this process claimed they could tell your future. If you wanted to marry some rich and famous guy and live happily ever after, but you turned over the death card, well, you were fated not to have your wish come true. Duh. My personal tarot card would have to be the Joker arrayed upside down. That signifies ill-advised risks, foolishness, rash decisions, impulsiveness and instability. I wasn't a good student in school, but my grades didn't reflect necessarily what I absorbed. I actually liked my English classes. In ninth grade we read William Blake's poetry. I loved Songs of Innocence and Experience, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. Where did I fit in then? No longer innocent and far too experienced. Yes, there were monsters all right, but Ripley, intergalactic battler of monsters, she knew how to slay the beast. She too began as an innocent, but she selected her own fate to face the monster down. In the forests of the night, they usually come out at night, the monsters. Little kids know that. That monsters hide in closets, under beds, in beds. Ripley found that out just before she lay down to hibernate for deep space voyage with her kitten. I found that out too. And me? I am Ripley of the bedsheet, sailor of the stars, battler of monsters, both foreign and domestic. I hope you enjoyed the chapter reading and that you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.